So, this morning, we saw the news that up to 1,000 young girls in Telford have been abused by gangs. And not only that, the authorities covered it up. They hid the details of all Asian abusers because they didn't want to be seen as racist. Well, is that racist? Is it racist to keep the details of someone who rapes and abuses and kills a young girl? No, it's not racist, it's common sense. Telford is not the only place where this has happened. This isn't a one gang in the UK that's abusing girls. This is a nationwide problem that is perhaps one of the biggest we have ever faced. Because it's not just Telford, it's Oxford, it's Rotherham, it's so many other towns across this country. For all we know, we could all be living in places where there are massive, evil abuse gangs that nobody knows about. The authorities might know, but they're covering it up. We see in every incident where this happens, the authorities are hiding details from the public. They are not investigating what's going on. They are not looking into claims that there are abuses and rape and murder of young girls in this country, and they're being ignored because they don't want to offend people, because they don't want to be seen as being racist, because they don't want to upset community cohesion. Well, it's not community cohesion when people from one community are raping, abusing and murdering young girls from another community. That's not community cohesion, that's evil. We have a problem in Britain, a big problem, and our politicians will not address it. They won't even name the problem. They will not say that we have a problem with people from certain communities, like parts of the Muslim community, who see it as acceptable and the right thing to do to rape, abuse and murder young girls. Well, that's not okay. That is not the right thing to do. And as Britain, as one of the most liberal countries in the world, we should be fighting this. We should be tackling what's going on, because there is a huge problem. What happened today is no doubt not the last. There will be countless more incidents of this going on across the country. Like I said, Oxford, Rotherham, so many other towns have been affected by this in the past. You know, this incident here, it was going on since the 1990s. The authorities knew about it, it was reported to them, but they didn't act on it. They didn't investigate what was going on. They didn't look into it. They didn't speak out about it. The police were too scared. We have to stand up about this, because this is so huge. You know, we talk about, it was International Women's Day on Thursday, and we talk about problems with microaggressions at universities. Now look, I'm sorry if there are women being offended by these sorts of things, but that is nothing compared to what's going on in places like Telford and Rotherham, where young girls are being raped and abused and murdered and threatened and oppressed by evil, evil people in our country. And it's not like the police don't know what's going on and they can't prove it. It's hundreds, thousands of witnesses have come forward and have said what's happened and have said they've been abused and have said they've been attacked and raped and threatened and killed. But the police aren't acting on it. The government are telling people to look away. Oh look, we've got a problem with microaggressions at universities. Oh no, we've got a problem with someone making an offensive speech. We're going to have to ban them from entering the UK, which I'll talk a bit more about later. But what about the real problems? What about what's actually causing these offensive speeches? Because they're not just making them up out of nowhere. There are young girls being raped, abused and murdered. It is not acceptable. We know we've gone wrong as a society when thousands of young girls report rape and murder from gangs in their communities and it is ignored. We know we've gone wrong when 8,000 girls a year report cases of female genital mutilation and not one is prosecuted. We know we have gone wrong when these things are going on and everyone knows what's going on but no one speaks up about it because our politicians and our police are too scared. The police are told not to because they might offend people. The government warn people to stay away from these issues because you might upset certain communities. You might trigger certain people. Well, I don't care if I'm offending a Muslim by saying this. I don't care if I'm triggering certain communities or damaging what they call community cohesion. Because I care about the young girls who are being killed and raped and abused and threatened with what's going on in Telford and Oxford and Rotherham. That's what I care about. If that triggers people, if that offends people, if that upsets people, so be it. But if it stops what's going on, if it even goes the slightest little way to making a difference, to stopping this abuse, then I will say it. And we all should. Not as UKIP or as the right wing or as, any group of people, as Britain. We should stand up and say, this is not good enough. For thousands of years, we have been the greatest country in the world in some ways for standing up for people's rights, for defending justice. And what we're seeing now is all of that being thrown away in the name of tolerance, in the name of acceptance or liberalism. Well, that's not liberal. It's not tolerant. It's evil. I don't know how many times I have to say this. Thousands of young girls are being raped, murdered, threatened, abused. And we're just ignoring it. We have to stop being politically correct. We have to stop dodging the issues that people don't want to talk about. We have to talk about them. For the sake of the people who need us, who don't have a voice, who are too afraid to speak up because they're being threatened on a daily basis and abused and raped. We have to stand up for them. Because if we don't, nobody will. And this will continue. Because the gangs aren't going to stop by themselves. They're loving it. We have to stop them. We have to stand up and say enough is enough. We have got to the point where our police, who are meant to be upholding justice in this country, are ignoring the gang rape of thousands of girls. That is not good enough. We know we've gone wrong because one case of FGM, female genital mutilation, is reported every hour in the UK. We know we've gone wrong because last year 22 young girls were blown up at a music concert. We know we've gone wrong because constantly, every few months, we're seeing reports in the papers of new scandals where the government have covered up cases of abuse of young girls, have hidden away details of Asian or Muslim rapists because they don't want to offend people or upset community cohesion. We have to stand up and say it. I don't care if it stops what they call community cohesion. What I care about is if it stops the rape, abuse and murder of young girls. If it does that, then good. If that offends people, if that upsets people, if that bothers people, then perhaps we need to look at those people and say, what is your problem? How is it offensive to stop rape? How is it triggering to stand up and say, no, it's not right that 8,000 young girls a year have their genitals mutilated? How is it wrong or racist to stand up and defend the most basic principle of any liberal country in the world, the right to a childhood without being raped? I know I'm saying this and it sounds crazy, but this is what's going on. This is what's happening in Britain. And I mean, are the politicians outraged at this? Are the politicians taking new actions to deal with this? Are they launching investigations? Are they trying to recover the files that the council deleted? No. I've heard nothing from our government about this. This is a massive, massive problem. This is quite possibly the biggest issue the Western world has ever faced. And we're just ignoring it. Now is the time to end political correctness. Now is the time to stop worrying about who we're offending and start worrying about the young girls being raped and murdered and threatened and abused. Now is the time we stop worrying about which Muslims we're offending and we start worrying about the girls in Oxford, the girls in Telford, the girls in Rotherham who are being raped and abused and killed because of this. There was an incident I read where a young girl in Telford was gang raped. And the next day, the gang leader came to her house and said, if you ever tell anyone about what happened, I'm going to burn your house down. Just think about that for a second. Just think about what that means for that young girl. She wouldn't have lived the same life again. And that's not just one incident. We're talking thousands of girls all the time, all over the country, going back decades. And The police have known about it. The police have been told about it. The government know about it. The councillors, some of them know about it. It's all been reported and it's all been ignored because they don't want to offend people. Why is it a problem to offend people? Why is it all of a sudden become a big deal that we're upsetting people? Let's upset people. Let's say the unsayable. Let's do the undoable. And let's stop the rape and abuse of our young girls. Let's stand up for what has been forgotten in this country. Because people have to recognise what's going on. The public are starting to realise that there is something going on that they're not being told about. That there is something happening that they need to stand up to. Because it's not just Telford. It's so many places across the country. And it's not just the ones I've said. Like Oxford, like Rotherham, like Telford. There's so many more that I don't even know about. That no one knows about. Because the police and the government are hiding it. There are more cases of this going on. We have to encourage people to say, it's alright to say it. If you know about a young girl who's been raped or abused in your area, do come forward, do say it. And if the person who did it happens to be Asian, or happens to be a Muslim, that's fine. You say it. You tell the world what happened. You report it to the police, and if the police don't do anything, you write to your MP, you write to your councillor, you write to all the political parties, and you go public, and you tell the world what's going on. Because we can't do this if we're all too afraid to fight to stop abuse of young girls. But if we all accept that it is fine, it is good to stop the rape and abuse of young girls, if we can start from the point of saying murder, rape, abuse and threats towards young girls is not acceptable, if we can start from that point, then we can stop the problem. But what we're doing by being politically correct is we're saying no, it's alright if young girls are raped, as long as Muslims aren't offended, as long as we don't upset the Asian community cohesion, it's all fine if a few girls get raped. Well, I say no, that's not fine. It's not acceptable that thousands of young girls are being raped and abused. That's not good enough. That is not something that Britain can support or sustain. We have to stop this evil in our community. Because if we don't stop it now, it will grow, and it will get bigger, and it will get worse. And it won't be up to 1,000 in a town raped. It'll be up to 10,000 in a town raped. And it'll be up to 100,000 in an area raped. And that's not acceptable, because this is a growing problem. Every year that goes by we hear about more and more and more girls who've been raped and abused and murdered and threatened. How long must this go on for before we look at ourselves and we think, what on earth is going on? How long until we look at our politicians and we say, why aren't you addressing this? Why aren't you talking about the truth? Why aren't you getting rid of this problem? Because it's not a complicated problem to get rid of. In most cases, all of the people who are guilty have been reported to the police. They have been reported to their councillors. They have been made known to the authorities. But no one's acting on it. No one's standing up and saying what has to be said. I don't care if I offend people by saying this. There's probably people in the comments right now who are getting triggered and offended by what I'm saying. Now, I'm sorry if you're offended. I don't mean to offend anyone. But if I happen to offend you by stopping the rape of young girls, so be it. If I happen to upset you because I'm standing up and saying that murder and threats towards our young girls is not acceptable, then so be it. And frankly, if our politicians don't come out and wipe this evil out and come forward and say where they've gone wrong and say that this is going on and accept they're making mistakes, then frankly we need to get rid of them and elect politicians who have the balls to do so. Because this is not good enough. This cannot carry on. If everyone watching this could share the live stream at the end, or even now, the more people we can get to watch this, the more people who we can get the word out, the better. Because it's not something that has to happen from a few key public speakers talking about this. This has to be a revolution from the bottom up of Britain. The ordinary people have to stand up and report what's going on, and talk about it, and address the issues, and communicate what is happening. Because if we don't, more girls will be raped. More girls will be killed. More girls will be threatened and abused and attacked by evil, evil people. If we don't stop this now. Theresa May won't address it. Jeremy Corbyn surely won't address it. Vince Cable won't address it. UKIP will address it, I'm sure. But We have to sort out all politicians and make sure everyone in this country is addressing it. We have to get actors to address it. We have to get every person in Britain to acknowledge that this is a problem. That it's not acceptable that young girls are being raped, abused and murdered. That it's not acceptable that 8,000 girls a year, that's 1 per hour, suffer from female genital mutilation. We have to say as a society, we've gone wrong. We have to say as a country that something isn't working right because people are dying. Young girls are being raped. The authorities are covering it up. Something isn't working, and that something is political correctness. That something is worrying more about who we're offending than our young girls who are being raped. I urge you, if you're watching this video, please, please spread this message. Please tell people what's going on. Share the news about what happened in Telford. Tell people what happened in Oxford and what happened in Rotherham and what's happening in all other towns across this country. That there are certain people raping and abusing and threatening our young girls. That there are murders going on. That there are young girls who are being told that they will have their houses burned down if they speak out about this. Well, you know what? Let's speak out about it. Let's offend people. Let's upset people. Because if that means that rape stops, if that means that we save the lives of young girls, if that means we stop young girls suffering from female genital mutilation, then I'm proud of it. I'm sorry if I upset people by saying this. I am. I don't mean to upset anyone. But I will upset people if that's what it takes. And I hope that everyone watching this video is thinking the same as me. I hope that you'll all share this video. And I hope that together we can solve this problem. I don't think any of the politicians, or at least very few of them in the House of Parliament, would do anything. But we've got an election in a few years' time. Let's kick them all out. Let's get rid of the lot of them. And let's put in a new parliament. A parliament that's willing to address what's going on. A parliament that's willing to say, we've failed. We've gone wrong. Thousands of girls are being raped and abused and murdered. And there is a problem with the authorities covering it up, and the police aren't doing anything about it. Let's stand up and let's say that. And then we'll build a solution going forward. We can wipe out this problem. We can deal with the issues that we're facing in so many communities. But it just takes a little bit of courage from the politicians. And if enough ordinary people stand up and say it, and fight for this, and say, no, let's not accept rape and murder of young girls. If enough ordinary people can do that, like I can see in the comments now people are doing, if we can start this movement, if we can build this up, if we can get to the stage where rape isn't acceptable, where we are willing to punish anyone who rapes a young girl, where we are willing to say, no, rape, murder, abuse, threats towards the young people of Britain is not acceptable. If we can get to that stage, we can solve the problem. We just need politicians who've got the balls to do it. Let's take a stand. And this isn't a UKIP thing. This isn't a thing to do with any group of people. This is a thing as Britain, as Europe, as people of the world, that we've got to stamp out. Because it cannot go on. This cannot continue. Everyone watching this video, please share it. Spread the word. Find the news articles about what happened in Telford and share them with your friends and your family. Tell people what's going on. And if you know about the abuse of a young girl, if you know about something happening in your area or anywhere in the UK, let somebody know. Tell the police. Tell me. Tell the media. Let people know what is happening. And if people call you racist, people probably will call you racist. But that's not a problem if people call you racist. Because you're not racist just because you stood up to rape. You're not racist because you're stopping the murder of young girls in this country. If young girls are being told their house will be burned down if they speak out about their rape, we know there is a problem. And I urge you, whatever threats you've had, whatever problems you're facing, you've got to speak out. Because that's how we stop this evil. Because it is much bigger than people realise. In almost every town in this country, there are incidents of young girls being raped and abused and murdered. You hear reports of torture. You hear all these things going on. And where are the government? Where are the police coming in and arresting every single suspect and finding out what's going on? Where are the government standing up and saying, this isn't good enough, we're enacting new laws to stop this? We're putting in new measures to end this evil. We're dealing with this problem. Because they're not dealing with the problem. They're not stopping this evil. And there's only so much longer we can go on for, because there will come a point where these gangs can overpower the police. And once we reach that point, it is impossible to stop it. The good news is we've not reached that point yet. If we can end political correctness, if we can accept that we might just offend a couple of people by saying this, if we can accept that harsh truth, then we can deal with the problem. I'll probably be called racist. I probably have been in the comments. Anyone who's commented in agreement, you'll probably be called racist too. You'll be offensive. You'll be intolerant. But you know what? If that means that young girls aren't getting raped anymore, if that means we've done a tiny little bit to stop the abuse of young girls in Britain, then I see that as a good thing. Thank you so much for watching. If you agreed with anything I've said, share this video, send it to your group chats, send it to any Facebook groups you're in, put it on your pages. Spread the word, because people have to know what's going on, and they have to accept that we can't be politically correct. We might offend people, we might upset people, we might have, every now and again, to accept being called racist. But if that saves our young girls, if that stops rape and abuse and murder in places like Telford and Oxford and Rotherham, then that's good. Thank you so much for watching. Please share, please spread the word, and let's stamp out this horrible, horrible evil.